Hi, I'm Mike Millett. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Efrvsnt. Today I'm here with Cade Resnick. Cade is the Chief Behavioral Officer. And Dr. Resnick, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, everyone. How's it going? Yeah, I'm the Chief Behavioral Officer here at Efrvsnt, and a little bit about me, as you said, Mike. Start with, I'm a dad of two kids. I really enjoy my two kids. They are a major part of my life, and the part of being a psychologist also allows me to watch them grow and put in perspective what's going on. And then I spend a lot of my time in research in what is known as IO Psych, or Industrial Organizational Psychology. And that is working with people, with companies, and making them better, looking at the fundamentals of a system. So I'm a systems theorist, if you will, or a systems ideologist, and looking at the system. I work a lot with the unconscious mind, or the unconscious behaviors, as far as people are concerned. And I spend a lot of my time, if not reading, writing, or working with people to understand what's going on. What works well with me and with a company like Efrvsnt is that life is ever changing. Systems are ever changing, even though they may not look like that. And so, living a dynamic life the best way that I can. One day I hope to look as good as Mike does, but I spend a lot of my time working out and trying to get into the gym whenever I have free time, taking kids with me where I go, and just meeting lots of people. I'm definitely an extroverted type of person who likes to be around a lot of people.
So that's really cool, Kate. So, you are a scientist, really. You're bringing behavioral science to business. How do you do that at Efrvsnt? I mean, what's Efrvsnt do, and why is behavioral science so important?
So if you look at the foundation of business, somebody has an idea, they create a company, and they work really hard to get it to work. And for the companies that are successful, they get to a point in the company, or the development of the company, and they go, I'm successful. They can't tell you how they got there. They just know all the hard work and the pieces to get there. And they start hiring in people to that company, and they don't realize that each of those layers is a different piece of a systematic process. Now, if a person wants to move a company forward, quite often they go back and look and say, I did this, therefore this should work. My job, realistically, or the job of Efrvsnt, is to really come in and say, okay, we know what you've done, but these are the ways that we evolve. These are the ways that we bring in the right personnel. These are the ways that we use the personnel you have with the understanding of what you are. So we look at the why, and that's where I come in. Why did this work? We look at the what do we do to move it forward? And that's where Efrvsnt really comes in. That's where I come in a lot, is in my psychological background, my scientific background. We look at the fundamentals. We look at the systematic fundamentals. We look at the business fundamentals, not just the financial fundamentals. And we move each piece, or work with each piece, so the whole system can evolve as a full piece, not just a one-off type of, I'm successful, therefore I am.
Right on. So you would say that Efrvsnt is kind of a management, leadership, business solutions company, and that the behavioral science is what separates it from all the other companies in that space. Do you think that's a fair statement?
100% spot on. When you look at a lot of the competition, a lot of the people that do what we do, they come in and they say, this is my formula for how we come in and fix you. And they have a one-stop formula. Just like I said, that executive who created their company, they have a one-stop system for why they were successful. A person in the leadership or management space, like we are, they come in and they say, this is my formula for moving you forward. We don't do that. We come in with more of a holistic scientific approach, and we say, okay, with this holistic scientific approach, the best way to do this could be this, and we help shape you based on scientific factors that move you. We're not using statistics or metrics just to move you. We're using qualitative information, quantitative information. So we talk to personnel, we see what each person's look is. Cultures are hard to change. Science helps us do all of that and helps us facilitate that. And that's what makes us different. We're not this is a one size fits all. We are an industrial and organizational team that comes in and facilitates with you.
So you're right on, man. So that is a unique approach. And you mentioned culture. How important is business culture? How important is the culture to business success? And what's the tie-in? How's it relate?
Well, here's the thing. Let's say you have a company and you have 50 employees. And it could be 500 employees. It doesn't really matter. But let's say you have 50 employees. You are the person that's in the C-suite at the top of the company, and you're looking at the numbers every single morning. And you're like, we had a good day, or we've had a good week, or we've moved this much product. What you don't know is what's happening to move that product. And you need to be able to get in there and understand what's happening at each of those levels as those levels move up. So let's say you have 50 employees, 10 of them are at the very bottom, and they're in a manufacturing warehouse, and they're manufacturing your goods for you. If some of those employees are disgruntled, or if some of those employees are having problems at home, or if some of those employees are fill in the blank, you need to know that. You need to understand that, and you need to be able to say, what can I do for that person that's there? And at the same time, there's a middle person that everybody's going on. That's knowing your culture. You know, the grandfather or the great-grandfather or the great-grandmother of a family knows everything that's happening in that family. Somebody calls her the busybody of the family. Well, yeah, but guess who is the roots of the family that keeps it together? Because he or she knows. The same thing happens in business. And we call it transformational leadership, in that the idea of servant leadership, and it is a top-down approach. Transformational is we come in and we transform the culture, and we all work as a team. So the person at the bottom is just as important as the person at the top. And it puts the whole circle together. So it's not a triangle, it becomes a circular business.
So that's interesting. Do you believe that, you know, the kind of C-suite leadership in an organization always has their finger on the pulse of the culture of the whole business, or the behavior, you know, understands the behaviors of the business in its entirety? Do you think that's always the case?
Not at all. Typically, the C-suite people, they have an understanding. They have ears down below, but they don't necessarily know how to touch what's going on, or they choose not to touch what's going on. So, you know, the reference is it's a 30,000 foot above, and I can see 30,000 feet above the company, and I know what's best for the company. Maybe you do, but you need to also come down to the ground and see what the ground is asking you for.
So would you say it's safe to say that by this transformational approach, where you're looking at the entire organization, that by getting kind of everybody on the same page, you're creating efficiencies in that business and a cultural belief system that drives to the bottom line?
Absolutely. You know, one of the executives for Ford many years ago, he went to one of the plants, and the executives that were at the plant took him to an area that was up above the manufacturing floor. And they said, here's where our visit is taking you to. And they put him up there. And he turned around and he said, I need to go to the floor and see what's going on. And the executives said, we don't go down there. We don't do that. That's how we operate. And the executive at the time said, nope, I'm coming down to the ground. I'm going to talk to all of my staff to find out what their needs are. And he just come on board. He just wanted to find out, well, that's the approach you need to take. And even he came down there, he found out what they needed, and Ford is still one of the most successful car manufacturers in the world for a reason. You know, and a staff member, again, using the same company, can bring in a design, and it's not, oh, no, that's stupid. It's like, okay, you want to put this together. How do we put this together? What do we do to do that? You know, and that's where you look at some of your major tech companies. They've moved to this transformational leadership where the bottom is just as important as the top.
It's funny you say that, because I was recently on a project in the South Pacific, and we were on a boat filming some sharks and other things. We had a couple of production companies there. One of them, a very, very, very well-known production house. Mm-hmm. And a couple of the executives from the production company got on board, and they came over to myself and another executive. We were having a conversation and said, hey, the executive area is upstairs. And upstairs was air conditioned and, you know, shaded, right. And they had food and water and all this stuff. And the guy looked at him and said, what the hell am I going to learn upstairs?
Right.
How am I going to understand what's good? The cameras are down here.
Exactly.
So I think across a broad spectrum of industry, that's a problem, and so how do you address that? How does Efrvsnt address that? It's through this analysis and science, huh?
Well, so let's go back to the beginning. You're right. It's through analysis and science, but it's not just me coming up to a person and saying, all right, so this is how we're going to fix your company. It's us coming in and showing you where the pain points are, or guiding you to where the pain points are in your company. Because we would have done the first phase, which is going and talking to all of those people and finding out what those pain points are. Then we're going to come in and talk to you. And it's not just, hey, you know what, Mike, here's what the pain points are in your company. You have to follow through. We will help you to follow through, because it's going to be a change in you as an individual to completely change your mindset of leadership. And there's going to be a trust factor that needs to be built as well, because you haven't been doing this. So now you're going to come down to work with the people, or be partnered with the people, or send your directors. If it's all the way down to, depending on the size of your company, maybe some of your directors start to do this, and you come with them and start to build this new culture.
Yeah.
So there's a step-by-step process. It's not just, hey, here's it is, and here's our documents, and move on. We handhold you through this rebuilding of culture. That's what also makes us different too.
And it sounds to me like the individual behaviors at all levels are the building blocks for that culture. I mean,
yes.
And we tend to forget that, I think, because we're looking at the organization as a whole.
Right. Well, let's think of a very small family really fast. Mom and dad, and mom and dad say to the children, don't do this, whatever it is. Don't leave your cup on the sink. Okay? Put the cup in the sink. I'm telling you to put the cup in the sink. I'm telling you to rinse your cup. So you've given 3 directions. Don't put your cup in the sink. I'm telling you to put your cup in the sink, and don't leave your cup on the counter. I'm telling you to put your cup in the sink and rinse your cup.
Right.
3 things. I'm telling you what to do. But I leave my cup on the counter. They're saying is, don't do as I say, do as I do, is very important, because the doing is so important.
Right.
And so just that example in a family structure, then make that in a bigger business structure, people see that. So if the executive is seen on the phone all day long with his feet up doing business, even if he's doing business, all I see is a lazy person with their feet up on a desk.
Yeah, perception's reality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so we need to come in and help change all of that.
So let's do this. Let's simplify this just a little bit. Give me 3 culture traits you see in a good business, in a successful business.
3 culture traits is trust. Number 1 is trust. So that the people, no matter where they are, know that they can trust each other, and the words in the building are not going to be used, held, or anything against them.
Right.
And that they are trusting that what they are doing has a value. They're not collecting a paycheck. They're coming to work because they have a value.
Okay.
The second is passion. People need to be enjoying what they're doing. And you do that by listening to what people are talking about at work. If they're talking about the work and they're enjoying the work and they're enjoying what's going on, that's there. And then the third that you're taking a look at it in a positive culture is it feels like a family.
So there's camaraderie.
Camaraderie. And if I'm having a bad day, 5 or 6 people are going to be like, okay, I'm just making up a number, 2 or 3, 5 or 6 people are going to go, hey, you know what? I'll pick up the slack for you. Go home. Family first. Take care of your family. Or, hey, you know what? Excuse me. It's let's all work on this together. I know we've got this project that's due in 3 days. It doesn't matter. Let's jump on it together and let's do it.
Okay, that's interesting. I'm a special operations veteran, the U.S. military, and talking to my friends and colleagues that, after we've gotten out, if I ask them what they miss about the military, that's the one thing that is on top of everybody's list is the camaraderie or the brotherhood. It's having that common purpose and common bond and a very distinct mission that we're all working towards. So it's that sense of pride in what we're doing.
Exactly.
That's really cool, man. And would you say that goes across all industry?
It does. And I've adjuncted at Stetson University for a long time. And people have said to me, well, why stay? Is the pay worth it? No, the pay's not worth it. It's not a lot of pay at all. But it's
kind of like the military.
Yeah, but it's the team environment. I go in there, and it doesn't matter that I'm an adjunct. I'm just as equal as to the full-timers. And it's a lot of support, and it's a lot of, hey, how can we help each other? How can we make this better for the mission, which is to get the students to advance?
Right.
And it's not a, hey, I'm better, you're better, I've been here 20 years, I've been here 30. It's how do we? It's a we thing, and it's trust.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I would agree with that in all that my professional experiences wholeheartedly. So, to make this happen, even to get an organization like Efrvsnt in, you need the buy-in from leadership.
Yep.
Somebody's got to release the funds to make this happen and agree to it. So what are some of the characteristics you find generally kind of at the top of businesses, as far as what individual characteristics of leadership, and how difficult is it to change their belief system? How do you do that?
Let's go back first to the part where you said, we've got to get into the front door. You're right. We do have to get in the front door. And we need to have people that realize that they need to grow, or they want to grow, and they don't have the ability to understand why they're not growing.
Right.
As this pandemic has gone through, we've talked to a lot of companies about crisis management. And the crisis is the big conversation. And a lot of companies went, I can do this myself. You can and you can't. But you've seen more failure than success, because the can't part, you didn't ask us how to facilitate some of those changes.
Right.
Now, coming back to that, because maybe I'm being a little harsh, it is us being able to come in and have a conversation with these companies, very honest conversation of how we can make you and support you to become that next level that you want.
Right.
And they being the executives, be willing to understand that we are good at what we do. And we know what we're doing. And we work across a broad spectrum of industries. So we see how they interconnect. When you sell a good, whatever the good happens to be, that's your market. But you don't realize how it all ties in. That's where we come in. And so Efrvsnt, on the CSuite side, you've got to let us be truthful with you. You've got to let us be honest with you. We're not going to come in and say you're all wrong. We're going to point out the right parts. We're also going to help you point out the parts that are going to grow your success.
Right. So,
and then, right.
I'm sorry. So I think you're absolutely, in my experience, you're absolutely correct. Being that once you get the buy-in from that leadership, it's easy to then start working throughout the organization. But I think the common misconception might be, and tell me if I'm wrong here, just human behavior wise, oftentimes leaders seem to think if I say so, it's going to be so.
Right.
But that's not the reality, because the organization, oftentimes the strength comes from a shared experience,
right? Not
because the boss said so.
Correct. Well, let's take a really very serious look at things. You're right. When a boss says, I want it done, the bottom line goes, why? Why do you need this? There's 10,000 other ways to do this better.
Right.
Because it's human nature. Second, you have 5 generations in the workforce now. Only one of those generations is that type that says, okay, the boss said it, therefore I'm going to do it. So you have 4 generations going, why? Why am I doing this? What's the purpose for it? And with that, you need the buy-in from the staff. You need the buy-in from all the people around you. A lot of times the boss is like, well, if they don't buy in, I'm going to fire them. Well, it's a lot easier said than done, because you don't often know who's not buying in. You don't often know what's going on.
Right.
So it's very humbling to admit I need help to go to the next level.
Yeah.
It's where you go find that help that makes a difference. And that's where Efrvsnt comes in. Let's use a very simple example. To go to a psychologist, Mike, you're a strong military man. You're like, I'm not going to a psychologist. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with you. I'm saying, why not check in and see what we can do to make you better?
Absolutely, man. 100%, Cade. That's something I talk about fairly openly. I do see somebody, and I spent all those years, trying to be as strong and fit and capable as I can, be as proficient as I can at my job. But my best tool is my mind.
Yep.
Why wasn't I working on that in the same manner?
Right.
So it's the same thing with business leadership. That's kind of the approach that you're taking, right?
Right.
You've got all the efficiencies created throughout your organization. Say you're a manufacturer, you've got all the efficiencies. You have you're managing the waste and runoff. Everything's going right. But why aren't you working on the individual process and individual leadership, individual behaviors that to grow even further?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. So another question, what are some of the behavioral challenges you see as you go into an organization? I mean, you're working across, like, as you said, a wide spectrum of industry. What are some of the common behavioral challenges you find?
Well, we've talked a lot about the C-suite. Let's talk about the staff for a second. A lot of staff aren't willing to accept their role. A lot of staff quite often are like, well, yes, but. And so a lot of what we do, not just talk to C-suite and work with C-suite, we also come in and talk to staff about, all right, let go of some of those preconceived notions. Let open what's going on to the changes that are coming towards you, and see that you may not see the big picture. You may not see the end. When we take a look at some of the concepts where we look at Covey's work, where it says work with the end in mind, a lot of people can't see the end in mind. They want it here and now.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to come in and say, okay, so if you're willing to work with us and willing to work with the C-suite and willing to work with everything, let's see how much of a better employee you could be at the end, or how much better the productivity can be at the end.
Yeah.
That
makes sense.
So go ahead.
We're talking about these individual staff members. There's got to be some difference in their performance levels generally. You have the really high performers, kind of 1%ers, and then you have the people that are just clocking in and clocking out every day. Do you manage them differently? I mean, from a leadership perspective, or from a management perspective, or from a behavioral perspective, trying to get them to buy into the culture changes, is it different for that 1%er high performer than it is just for the person clocking in and out on a daily basis?
Absolutely. I'm going to take it one step further. If you are able and capable, and this goes to the military, so I'm going to use some of the military examples. An individual director should be in charge of no more than 15 people. And then in a division should be more of a triangle, so then you have some middle management that's able to handle more people. So it spreads out on the bottom.
Yeah.
So, and again, a company may not be big enough to do that. So we're going from an Amazon, or we're going from a smaller company. Either which way, we've got to kind of differentiate this triangle. Okay. Yeah. And if there's one person who's a manager, and that person has 5 people beneath them, and that manager answers to 2 people above them, or whatever the numbers are, they need to know everything about those people at the bottom.
Right.
Family life, work life, passions for moving up in the company, desires to grow, what other education this person, like all those variables need to be in place in that one manager's mind.
Yeah.
If that manager ends up, oh yeah.
All that stuff impacts their performance.
Absolutely. So now if that person has 10 people, it becomes harder to know everything, but okay, 10. 15 is the capacity, because the brain can't go from knowing too many things.
Right.
Okay. So that one person has 15 people. That's a division.
Yep.
Now you ask, do we manage them differently? Yes. Every one of those 15 people needs an individual management plan.
Right.
And it doesn't matter if you're a 1%, I'm going to go gung-ho and I'm going to do this, or an A-type personality. It matters that you, the leader, knows how to manage those 15 people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess through your, organizational analysis, when you come in, when you engage in a project, that organizational and behavior analysis you do, you're going to be able to pick some of those things out. That's great information for the leadership at all levels.
Right. Well, like you and I having a conversation now, and yeah, it's over Zoom. It's a different experience for us, but we're having a conversation now, and you and I we're growing our understanding of each other.
Yes. Certainly.
Even though we've known each other, we're still growing our understanding of each other. And that's what management should be doing. They shouldn't be sitting behind a desk crunching numbers. That's what they do once they've spent their time knowing managing is managing people.
Right.
And yes, you've got a division called human resources. That's managing the legal side of people.
Yeah, right.
Managing is managing people and how to get your staff to be productive in the best way possible.
But what I did in the military, we always said like our span of control was 3 to 5 people for our particular job set. 3 to 5 people. That if we were trying to control more than that, it became too much for the actions we had to do, for what we had to do, and to bring the proper amount of lethality and all the stuff associated with that. There was just so many things going on. So that makes complete sense to me. By really understanding those 3 to 5 people, we became so efficient and could predict one another's behaviors.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes plenty of sense. So can that be trained? So say we have these really high achievers, people that are doing really well in your organization. Then you have some that are just kind of following along, and then you have kind of the lower level that are just punching the time clock.
Yep.
Can those behaviors be trained so you get everybody kind of to the same level?
Yes. So it's not behaviors. It's finding a way to get into a person's desires.
Yep.
You know, why are we Efrvsnt doing this? Because we have a passion for growing businesses. We have a passion for seeing others succeed. We have a passion for guiding people forward. It's what you and I wake up every day and like, okay, how can we make this better? And as a company, as a team, we're doing that. Okay.
Right.
As a company, you are the CEO, you have a passion for your company. You want employees that have a passion for the growth and success of your company as well.
Right.
You know, let's pick on Google for example. Google has become this massive, giant corporation. But even that they have become such that they have every single division is small and shrunk into the passions that people want to have within Google. So I'm not going and saying, hey, you work on this project unless you want to. And that's very important, because if I turn around to me and say, hey, I know you have no experience in this, but do it, I'm going to just do it until I find my next job.
Right. Right.
But if I come to you and say, hey, I need somebody who's able to do this. Is this something you'd like to take on? Is this something that you want to be part of? Get back to me in a week. Think about it. Get back to me in a week. Not only have I now tapped you and said, hey, you're the person I appreciate, but I get the choice.
Yeah, right. So what I'm hearing is that individual behaviors have a huge impact on organizational success.
Absolutely.
So really, that's kind of the first target at Efrvsnt, is really understanding those individual behaviors.
Yes.
And then shaping a leadership and management culture that both accepts those individual behaviors and focuses them on for a desired impact.
Right.
Does that
100%.
Right on?
Here's the thing. So Mike, you come into a new company. I love this example. So you come into a new company, right? And you ask how we sell a CEO. Sometimes I've used this example a few times to get a CEO to buy into the service. I'm a brand new employee. I've just come into a company. I know nothing about the company.
Right.
So I'm wide-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to go. And I'm like, all right, I'm excited. Let's make this work. And you put me into the pool of other employees. I know nothing about the company, except I now know everything based on this pool of employees as they're sharing with me. I'm hearing the good and the bad.
Yeah. It's kind of like social media.
Exactly. And as I hear more of the bad, and then I see the bad, that's the actual behaviors we talked about before, I'm going to believe the bad.
Right.
Because there's going to end up being more of these. And you can turn around and say, okay, I'm going to fire these employees. Up here has no idea these employees exist.
Yeah, that's right.
And so what you need to do is you need to take the good and rebuild the bad. So we get, for lack of a better term, the cancer, restructure the cancer and build it together so the employees are happy. You're never going to make everybody 100% happy. You know that. But you need to find out. So this is where this management comes down and finds out from these people, how can I make life better for you? What is it you need?
Yeah, that makes
If this group of people turns around and says, I need a daycare on campus, that's not what we're talking about. What are we talking about here? You need a food truck here every day? That's not what we're talking about. How can I make life better for you so you can be more productive in my business?
Yeah, absolutely. So by giving the individual some ownership in the business, you're creating the same type of drive that hopefully the owner of the business has.
Exactly.
And in my professional experiences, whether it was in the Ranger Regiment or on a production team doing something for Discovery or National Geographic, the leadership I've really looked up to is the leadership that I've had shared experiences with.
Right.
Whether in Greenland up above the ice sheet with a production team, when that guy's, the guy that's running the whole thing or the gal that's running the whole thing, we're eating the same food, sleeping on the same ice, walking the same distances. We're suffering together.
Right.
Same thing,
exactly.
With the Ranger Regiment, we have this shared experience. It's what we used to call a point of reference. We have a point of reference so that we all have the same understanding of what it is we're doing because we've gone through it all together.
Correct.
So Efrvsnt creates that type of experience?
Yes.
Oh, right on. It's very cool.
And we help show you how to create that experience.
And how to do it continually without Efrvsnt there, right? How to not only create it, but how to make it consistent and repeatable.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. So let's change topics just a little bit. I know one of the things that Efrvsnt's been doing or talking about a lot lately is crisis management planning. What is crisis management planning and how's it effective and why?
So one of the things that we try to implement, and then of course this pandemic showed up, is we started working with some companies on crisis management. In every organization, there's going to be a crisis. We're living through one right now, okay? But it could be any other crisis. It could be a financial crisis. It could be a crisis of manufactured goods. There could be so many different variables, but you need a team in place that is able to handle the pressures and the stressors of what that's going to look like so you can get through it. Think of the rough waters of the sea. You need somebody or a team in place that's going to be able to handle the ship and handle the employees and handle all the stressors that are coming at you. And quite often, this is not the CEO, because the CEO has a way to find success.
Right.
But you need a team that is practicing situations and practicing scenarios and practicing for the success of a crisis often.
So the CEO has to run the business during the crisis, and the crisis management team is dealing specifically with the crisis. Is that
within
accurate?
the business? Yes.
Yeah, within the business. Okay. So how important are personalities and specific behavior traits to that team? Like, it seems like that would be really important. Somebody that's unflappable or maybe has a set of experiences that has had them previously deal with something similar. How important is the individual behaviors?
Extremely. So as we start to prepare for things, it's hurricane season here in Florida. We're coming up on hurricane season. You need a crisis management team that is well-versed in how to handle crisis, and it only helps better if they can handle a hurricane crisis.
Right.
Whatever the situation is, because we don't know. So we've got a team in place that is ready and prepared for when this crisis happens. And you would not just have the team in place, you would also have the paperwork in place and the book in place or a binder in place that says, these are the things we do. Because quite often you can put a crisis management team together. Let's say it's 4 or 5 people in your organization and one leaves. Okay? Now your team's cut down by 1. You don't want to replace it just with any random person. You got to go find the right person and bring that person in.
And Efrvsnt's able to help with that, and how?
Yes, we have experience in putting those teams together. We've done a really good job with that. So we've helped put some of those crisis management teams in place, showing them how to write the documents necessary, put the chapters together as they need to be for various crises or crises as they come about.
So it's safe to say that a crisis management team is a permanent or semi-permanent team in your organization, kind of like a project man. Think of it as a project management team. It's just permanent or semi-permanent, and they're kind of always behind the scenes preparing for whatever, like you said, we tend to think of crisis now, we think of pandemic. Right. But the reality is hurricanes, a death in the senior leadership, behavior that impacts the reputation of the organization, all these other things can be crisis. Yeah.
Right. And big corporations who might be publicly traded, they maybe have to be ready for a crisis of some type, or a PR nightmare, or earthquakes in some parts of the country, tornadoes in other parts. I'm talking about weather issues. There's so many variables that can come into place.
Yeah.
Again, you could have a roadway project that's not a project management team. You mentioned that they're not meeting deadlines.
Yeah. Absolutely.
What are the variables for the crisis management team? Because the leadership's going to go, all right, well, we're going to just do this. Well, wait, let's take a step back. We're not just doing this. What are the steps that we created for this success?
Yeah, right. That makes plenty of sense, and that they're there all the time in preparation. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so done talking crisis management and leadership. I want to talk CADE for a second. Okay. There's a question that I've heard numerous times over the years that I've always found really interesting. I'd like to ask you that question. All right, it's 3 parts.
Okay.
What is your favorite book?
Okay. What
book are you reading now? And what book would you recommend to a 17-year-old when that person is 17-year-old in 2030? So that person is 17-year-old, 15 years in the future. What book would you recommend?
All right. So I'll start with the what book would you recommend? I would look at Stephen Covey's work. Okay. Mike, do you know Stephen Covey?
I don't. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So Covey is one of the people that wrote the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Okay.
And then there's also 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens, which is why I said Covey's work. I would recommend for any 17-year-old to read both of those books.
So you think that's timeless?
Yes. Because the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens go hand in hand. They're not the same habits. They're different. But they focus on being the best person you can be.
Man, it seems like everything we've talked about distills down to individual human behavior and how to manage that human behavior collectively.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, what are you reading now?
I'm reading a book called Shadow of the Wind.
Okay, tell me a little bit about it.
Okay. So it's an interesting story in which, and it's not a business book, it's actually a little bit different than that. It's an individual who is a young boy. He finds a book called Shadow of the Wind, and he goes to read it. And it's all about an adventure. And he decides to create his own adventure to find the author of this book.
Okay.
Who in mystery just happened to go missing. And as he's finding his way through, he's finding all the different reasons why this book was written.
Oh, that sounds really interesting.
So
yeah, very cool.
It's different. It's something it was given to me as a book to read, but it's like he's meeting all these people, and in meeting these people, he finds out more about them. So you can see a lot of me in reading this book, because as he's meeting all these people, it's finding out how they played a part in the main character's life.
That's really cool. Hey, I'm actually sitting on my porch outside. It sounds like the landscapers are just showing up, Cade. So real quick, tell us the title of your favorite book.
All right, so my favorite book is by an author named Terry Goodkind. It's called Wizard's First Rule. It's a science fantasy book or a fantasy novel. In fact, my daughter is named after one of the characters.
Oh, really cool.
So it's all about how to live your in a weird way, how to live your best life, but it's all about creating and benefiting from negative doubt to positive success as somebody who becomes, this leader of the world, if you will.
Oh, that's really cool, Cade. Hey, man, I want to thank you for your time today.
You got it.
And, for anybody that's interested, we can find out more about you and more about Efrvsnt on their webpage.
Absolutely.
All right.
All right, Mike. Thanks for your time. I can hear him.
Thanks a lot, Cade.
You got it, Mike.
Cheers.